This is Todd Hetty with Head First Performance. We're getting ready to start the Shelbyville Triathlon series for 2022, which is a series of triathlons, super sprints, February, March, and April. If you want more information on those triathlons, check out headfirstperformance.com and you can get to the information on those. The reason for these videos are a more general answering questions that I get every year from prospective triathletes or people that are committed to doing their first triathlon but really have never done anything like this before. So the first video, of course, we're going to talk about what do you need to do a triathlon. Basic answers, really very little. Triathlon in itself, if you're into it, can become a very expensive hobby very quickly. But getting into it, it really doesn't need to be. So what do you need to compete in the triathlon? First, generally what you're going to wear, a triathlon suit is nice. These come in 1 or 2 piece. The only real advantage of them, of course, other than being the aerodynamics, because they're a tighter fitting outfit, is they do have a pad, smaller pad, for riding your bike in. On a super sprint, for a 6-mile bike, for example, the first Shelbyville Triathlon, do you really need a pad? I think you can get by pretty well without it. So, what else are the possibilities? I would stay away from really heavily padded bike shorts, just because those are going to soak up a lot of water, and you're going to have to run in them, and they're sometimes very uncomfortable to run in. The first race in our series, being in the winter, the swim is at the end, so that holding the water wouldn't be as big a deal. But I know back when I started doing triathlons in the early 80s, everybody wore a Speedo for the whole race, so that's always an option. Compare a pair of what they call the jammers that people swim in, also very good. You can even wear swim trunks, especially for the first Shelbyville Triathlon, since the swim is in reverse order. You're not going to go out dripping water like you would from swim trunks in a normal order triathlon. So basically, any kind of appropriate swimwear you want to have, that's great. Something you can swim, run, and bike in is even better. A lot of times there's locker rooms or other places you can change if you choose to go that route. But my advice is just something that you're comfortable in, that you can wear through all 3 legs of the race. Now, for these winter races or races that are unseasonably cold, you've got to keep in mind you're probably going to be wearing a pair of tights over these, or sweats for the bike and the run. One thing to keep in mind, if you're going to wear sweats, anything baggy, make sure that's not going to get caught on the chain on your bike. Pay attention to that so you won't cause yourself to have an accident. But on the swim, like I said, any type of appropriate swimwear that you're comfortable with is great. The other, what I would see as necessary, would be goggles. In those, the best way to deal with goggles is because the shape of everybody's face is just a little different. Buy a pair, see if they work for you, make sure they don't leak, and just experiment till you find something you're comfortable with that doesn't cause you any leakage issues. And that's basically it for the swim. On the bike, of course, that's the big thing, is the bike. What kind of bike do I need for a triathlon? You don't need anything special at all. If you've got a bike and you're just wanting to see if you enjoy the sport, ride it. Of course, the knobby tires on a mountain bike are going to be slower than those on a road bike. But just keep that in mind. You're not going out there to see how fast you can go. You're seeing if you enjoy the sport and want to continue on it. The key to bike, more so than what type of bike you're riding for your first race, is make sure that bike fits you. And I'm not going to go into all the details of bike fit and how to do that. There's thousands of other videos on YouTube where you can check that out and make sure that's going to happen. But it's very important. It's going to be more comfortable to ride a bike that fits you, and you're also least likely to injure yourself. So keep that in mind. Look at that. If you do have an old bike you're digging out of the garage or the barn or whatever, just to see if you enjoy triathlons, make sure that everything works on it. Make sure the brakes aren't rubbing and that they work. that the gears change the way they should. A lot of these things. Once again, if you're the do-it-yourself kind of person, there's plenty of videos on the internet that can show you how to put a new chain on your bike and those kind of things. You can check that out. Or this is a good time to start making a relationship with your local bike shop, because if you do continue with the sport, they're going to be your friends. You're really going to need advice and maintenance on those bikes and those type things. So what else for the bike? Helmet. And this is probably, if you want to spend money on something you have to have, this is probably something that you want to spend the most money on comparatively, because a quality helmet you can use riding a bike with your kids or touring or whatever. And this is what you're going to expect to protect your brain in case of an accident. So make sure you get a good helmet and make sure it fits you snugly. It's not sliding all over. Everything. So that's what the main focus I would have, is getting a quality helmet. Do you need any kind of special shoes for the bike? Absolutely not. Especially for your first triathlon, and if it's a super sprint, really I am not convinced that for most people that on a 6-mile bike ride in a triathlon, it's not going to be faster to wear those shoes you have ran in or are going to run in on that bike, because you might save a few seconds on the bike, but then you still got to change your shoes during transition. So if you've got a super fast transition, maybe it's worth it. If not, I wouldn't worry about any kind of special footwear or anything. On the run, the only thing you possibly need is a pair of shoes. It's a good idea if you're not a runner and you're just getting into running for this, go to a local running store and talk to the salespeople there. They're going to help you. They're going to get you a pair of shoes that are appropriate for the way you run, your foot structure, and paying a little extra than, oh look, I found these shoes on sale on the internet, I'm just going to get these. Well, paying for a quality pair of shoes is a whole lot cheaper than paying for a doctor's visit because you bought the wrong shoes. So keep that in mind. Have somebody help you with that issue. That's pretty much all the necessary equipment that you could possibly need for this triathlon or any of your first triathlons. The one added piece of equipment that I might suggest is a race belt. If you guys aren't familiar, all that is, it's kind of an elastic belt with some buttons on the front that you can put your number on, and that way when you're on the run, that number's in the front, and when you're in the bike, that number's on the back. Very important for not only triathlon, running. Anytime you're running, you want your number on the front. That way, if there's a problem with timing, the timers can see it. Some of the bigger races for photographers, that's how they're identifying you. So in a run, having your number on your back does nobody any good at all. On the bike, though, on the other hand, since you're going to be bent over, especially if you're riding a triathlon bike or some other type of aero bike, you're going to be bent over more and nobody can see that number on the front. So these race belts, they just make it a lot easier to spin that number around where you need it, and it's also out of your way that way. That's the only extra thing I would suggest. I hope this covered anybody's equipment questions. Next, we'll get outside. We'll start talking about the sports in general, the swim, the bike, the run, and then the transition. And we'll do individual videos to cover each one of those. And hopefully we will get outside and do them. The weather will be nice, and they'll be a little more interesting than me sitting in here.